All right, let's turn to the general consent calendar, and we'll entertain a motion, if there is one, to approve the consent items. And I see one light from Member Klein.
Yes, I would like to pull number 3.
Item number 3. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling up here. This is, I just want to name it in the, is book surplus, AIR? I'm sorry, let me get in the right spot here.
Go to,
Item 1, right? Come on,
and then go.
there we go. That's what I was having, I think I'm sort of there now. Okay, I'm there now.
Yep.
Okay, I got it.
No, it's on the consent. It's, click on the consent calendar. American Institute.
So, yeah, this is the air contract. It's item 3. When we, if you've got connections, which is the question. Second item under general consent calendar, the April board consent calendar for approval brings up a nice chart. And it's item number 3 on the chart, which is the vendor agreement with the American Institutes for Research in the Behavioral Sciences. So let's give it a pause and make sure we've got connection. Like folks are still trying to get back on. Member Bogus has a light on while we're getting back on. So item number 3 has been pulled. We don't have a motion yet.
Chair, I'd move to separate the other two as well, please. Yes,
So,
to pull them so we can address them separately.
okay, so your
Thank you.
motion, you're pulling the top 2,
Yes, please.
items 1 and 2, and asking to have those addressed separately. And Sybil, I forget, does that require a voted motion to separate, or when it's consent, you can separate the 2 as part of your pull? Gotcha. Okay, we have pulled items 1 through 3 then. So let's look at, hang on. All right. Since everything's been pulled, back to Member Klein. You asked first to have number 3 pulled. Would you like to address item number 3?
I just have concerns with partnering with AIR Research. They're a behavioral sciences company, and wondering why we are partnering with them on a K-3 early literacy materials.
So that's probably a question for staff. Is that a Sarah question, or is that somebody else? Whoever would like to join us, come on down. Thank you. It says Sarah, but either one, we're fine. Yeah, either way. We're good. We've got double. Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Wibke, Literacy Coordinator for the Utah State Board of Education. As far as the AIR contract, we went through the PRF.
Sarah, will you lean into your mic just so
sorry.
we can hear you? Thanks.
Just keep it real close. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'll start over. Sarah Wibke, Literacy Coordinator for the Utah State Board of Education. The AIR contract is it comes from SB 127, which was passed, not this previous session, but the one prior. It is one of the projects that we were required to go through the purchasing process, meaning the RFP process. This specific vendor won that process, won the contract. And so the contract is in front of all of you for consent and approval. And the purpose of this specific project is really around making sure that the staff here at USBE have a variety of resources that we can share to our stakeholders. And when I say stakeholders, I mean our administrators, our teachers, parents, really all of the different levels of groups that we work with in order to have really strong literacy components and resources to use when they don't know where to go. Rather than having them Google, and there may be some really great things out there, but they might have to dig and find them, the company is doing that for us, so that when we review all of them, so they all come through us, staff review, as there's a committee, we'll review all of it to make sure that none of it is going against any of our board rules or any of our laws and codes. And then if they are great, then we will put them up in a repository manner so that there's one place where people can go and say, these are all of the amazing literacy resources out there, and these are the best of the best, so you don't have to have an overwhelming list. And so that's the purpose of the project.
Thank you, Sarah.
Follow up.
Quick follow-up, Member Klein?
So it says in the general description under the scope of work that AIR will identify resources and then screen them based on a pre-identified set of inclusion and exclusion criteria. What exactly are those criteria?
So in thinking about the criteria that AIR came up with, which is, we went back and forth with them on the scope of work to make sure, like I said, it, goes in line with all of our codes and rules. The criteria is more around making sure that the materials provided are really the science of reading, which has been a big push in our state, rather than like balanced literacy, which is where we're teaching kids to guess at the word if they don't know, instead of teaching it. So they wanted to make sure that the materials that they're reviewing that are out there are meeting those criteria, the ones that we have set forth in our bill, SB 127, so that they actually match with what our messaging is and our code requires us to do.
Thank you, Sarah. Member Bogus?
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple questions about this. One, SB 127, I have the enrolled copy here, has no fiscal note. How are we actually paying for this?
Had a fiscal note, we got $20 million.
It
Jennifer
says money
Thronson, the Director
appropriated
of
in this
Teaching and
bill.
Learning, there was
It says
about
none.
10 million in one time and 9 million in ongoing. So we can get that for you if that.
I would love to see that because the bill says in line 49 that no money was appropriated as a part of this legislative code.
There was money.
And then it says in here, USBE, and this might seem like a weird question. Who is USBE? For example, task 1, AIR will establish priorities with USBE, and also it says it will require approval from USBE. This acronym is used, but who is that? Who is authorizing these tasks within? And there's a lot of nebulous and ambiguous language in here that I think should be expanded and made very clear for both parties.
So, Member Bogus, I take it your question is within the context of this bill, right? There's USBE
I'm actually-
as a full entity, or do you have a specific reference in the
Well,
bill?
and not actually in the bill, in the contract, it references USBE many times. It says it will require approval from, they will collaborate with, but who is USBE? Because it seems, based upon the context, that every time USBE is mentioned, it's a different element of USBE, and I would just like clarity. And maybe that language should be in the contract. If it's the board, it needs to be explicitly identified as board approval. If it's staff approval, that should be explicitly identified. And there's some language in here that's very nebulous that I just go, wow, that, as a board member, it causes me consternation when I don't see a rubric attached to this contract for these things. How would staff be making those decisions? So I'm just wondering, who is USBE?
Got it, thank you. Is that a Director Thronson or Sarah?
Yes, USBE in the contract is referring to staff. In some cases, when it's like in the financial portion of the contract, it would be our purchasing and finance team. When it is referring to literacy, it would be the committee around literacy at our state.
Okay,
Does
so
that answer the question, or do you have a follow-up?
it does. I
Member
have
Bogus?
just a couple follow-ups. I wish this had line numbers, so I do apologize. It's on page 18, about halfway down. it says that, that the screening process goes on. In the very last line of that general description, it says, to identify the gaps in resources. What is the methodology that's intended to be used to identify those gaps in resources?
Which page did you say?
In my document here, it says page 18 in the upper right-hand corner. The document itself doesn't have page numbers in my copy.
General description. It's stated in the general description.
It's number 2, scope of work, general description, literally about 50% of the page, it says, will work with USBE to identify gaps in resources and then develop. And I'm just wondering about the methodology used to identify the gaps in resources.
That's fine.
No, it's fine. I understand.
Yes. Thank you so much for your patience. I appreciate that. The gaps in resources, what that means is within the bill, there's language around what kind of things need to be, what kind of audiences need to be included in this repository, meaning we need to have resources for parents. We need to have resources for educators. And so the gaps are, do we have resources only for one group, or do we actually have resources for all of the groups that are called out in the specific code? Because we want to make sure we're meeting the guidelines set forth in code. And so those gaps are just to make sure that the resources provided are meeting the requirements within there and hitting all of the audience that is meant to hit.
Should that be explicitly defined in the contract? To me, that, I came up with about 7 things right off the cuff about what those gaps could be, and I'm wondering if that should be more explicitly defined.
It is in code, but it's also, it's in the contract. Let me find it on the right page for you.
Okay, thank you.
Member Bogus, let's see if we've got some other lights while they're, I do want to make sure that you get an answer to the question, but if it takes a minute to look it up, we can come back to you.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah, Member Lear.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions for either Jennifer or Sarah, whoever's most appropriate. Is that okay? Chair, can I just ask them directly?
Sure.
I just wondered if this contract was selected through the regular RFP process?
Yes.
And went through all those steps? And do you recall how many applicants there were, or?
There were 2.
Okay. And then our legal team, once the contract was negotiated and written, the procurement legal team reviewed it, right? Or is that true? I'm not
Yes.
trying to lead you. Is that true? And reviewed it very thoroughly, as is their process. Okay, thank you. And I would like to make a motion, Chair.
Let's come back. We do have a light here, and we have a follow-up back with Sarah, if we could just get through
Okay.
those, but thank
The
you.
audiences
Should I stay on?
are,
Q?
Sure. Yeah, I got you.
the audiences are in line 3 of the contract. So number 3, general purpose of contract, that's where it has the different audiences that are required to be, required to have materials for them.
Do you have a page number for that? I'm
Very
sorry,
first
Sarah.
page.
Say it again?
Very first page, number 3, general purpose. It's that line.
Okay, thank you. Let's, Member Earl has a question.
I'm so sorry,
Thank you,
Chair,
Sarah.
I don't see it.
Well, maybe we might, well, let's see. I do want to make sure you see it while we're here. Sure, yeah. Let's saunter in support of the answering of the question.
So I'm going to ask my question, because I asked this of Director Thronson yesterday. I want to know there's checks and balances to this, because I too have concerns with AIR themselves as an organization. So I want to know that whatever resources we're getting, that it's being checked appropriately. You've addressed some of that with making sure it meets our laws and our policies and such. Is the panel, the Science of Reading panel, will they have the opportunity, if they want to engage in looking at these materials to know if they're aligned? I guess I want to making sure there's a checks and balances here, not just AIR putting things together and saying, these look great to us, here you go. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. So in the contract, it specifically states that they are bringing things to us. We meet with them monthly, and then as staff, we're reviewing to make sure that they are meeting all the guidelines. We could certainly ask the panel if they would be interested. Know that in the legislation, it's written about who has to be part of this. So the panel had to have a member, at least one, on the RFP team. Staff had to have people on the RFP team. The Center for, what's USU's name? The School of the Future, the USU, they had to have people on the panel, or not the panel,
For the RFP
The
or
committee.
for the review of the content when it comes back?
required for the RFP, but they certainly can be part of that. We can ask them, they don't have to be, but we can ask, we can request that. And then also the Policy Center out of the U of U, UEPC.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm looking for that check because like I said, I too have concerns with some of AIR's content and their work. So if there's a check coming back to us that I feel like I can trust that element, then I can move forward with this. If we're not sure if there's a check when it comes back, then I would have a concern moving forward. So, thank you.
All right, back to you, Member Lear.
Chair Moss.
I'd like to make
Oh,
a.
I'm sorry, Secretary Dixon.
Yeah, if I could just tag on Vice Chair Earl's comments or questions, and this is for Sarah and Jennifer. It seems like we could do a couple of things just based on what I've been hearing. One is to make sure that the board and the public is aware of the list that's proposed each month. So, as you go through and screen that, we could make sure that that's put before the board so they have awareness. I think another thing is just to be clear, bring the committee of reviewers and kind of a review process to the board so that they're aware as well. I think I heard you, Vice Chair Earl, talk about kind of the expansion of who reviews, just making sure that that's not at the feet of AIR, but that, as stated in the contract, we are doing that as USB, and this goes back to Board Member Bogus. USBE is us, it's multifaceted, but USOE that used to exist does not exist. So, we are one together, and I think it's fair to say, where's the transparency in all of that? And so, even though it doesn't require board approval on some of these things, I think there are many ways we can get it in front of you as a board, both the lists and the reviewing process, just so you can make sure that it's in front of everybody, if that helps. And maybe, I know we could probably follow up with an email or something. Just putting that
Thank
before the
you.
board to
Thank
say
you,
there are ways that we
Superintendent.
can build in transparency.
Thank you. Member Klein.
I would also ask if staff would please send us a list of the pre-identified set of inclusion and exclusion criteria, a detailed list. And then just one more question on that second paragraph under the general description. It talks about USBE's input and improvements throughout the project to ensure high-quality products that provide exceptional value. So I'm just wondering, in this context, what does high quality mean? Is it related to our high-quality instruction manual?
Not only that, but also high-quality instruction in general and literacy specifically, but also, yes, it would be in alignment with our resources that we already have available.
So I would just remind that in that high-quality instruction manual, that is a 6-cycle iterative manual. Within each of the 6 cycles, there are 6 areas, and 2 of those areas that are repeated in each cycle is equity and social emotional learning.
A question or a comment? I take it as a
Just a
comment.
comment.
Okay, back to
I
Member
will not be
Lear.
supporting this.
And I have a motion, then I'd like to speak to the motion.
Okay.
I'd move that we pass the consent calendar. Can I speak to the motion?
So we have separated the 3 items out, right? Are you looking for all 3?
I'd like
They've
to,
been separated, so I think we have to have a separate.
then I'll make a motion
Vote.
on this item.
Okay.
Specifically, that we pass this item out. Can I speak to that?
Yes, we do
I-
need a second. Second. There we go.
I feel like this is, I don't just feel like, these contracts have been negotiated by attorneys, by experts in the field. I absolutely agree that it's the board's role to review them and approve them and carefully think about them. On the other hand, we don't have all of the expertise and the details of negotiating a contract. And to pick this apart piece by piece is not productive and perhaps undoes the work of those people who do have that expertise. So I think if we, in evaluating these contracts, we have to do it holistically and believe that our staff has been very diligent, and that means legal staff, that means the content matter staff in getting what they want from AIR. And so I feel like we've done that. The staff has done that. Now it's our role to say yay or nay and not sort of suggest that there are holes in the contract. Feel like they've done an excellent job of this. So with that, I'd like to call a question.
Well, let's see. You've just spoken to the motion. We had one light on, but if you've brought a motion for a previous question, then if there's a second and 2/3, then we will be calling the question. Is there a second?
They already seconded.
So,
Well, you had a motion to move on the underlying item to approve it.
Motion to approve it. Right.
Correct. You've now moved to call the question. That
Well,
requires a second and then a
okay.
2/3 vote, unless, yeah, so,
Seems like the same thing to me.
well, if it's been seconded, I don't know that we can withdraw it, right? So,
I
Let's-
don't believe we can call the question without opportunity for debate on the original motion.
well, that's what the calling the question does, but it's only if
Cuts off
2/3 vote for it. So that's the motion on the floor. Let's go by show of
Well,
hands.
may I ask, what is,
Sorry?
what is the motion?
The
Just for the
underlying
point of
motion
clarity.
was to approve item 3, which is the air contract.
Mm-hmm.
There was then a motion to call the previous question, which is not debatable, requires a second and a 2/3 vote. If 2/3 vote for it, then we won't have debate. We'll vote on the underlying motion to approve item 3. So all those in favor of calling the question, let's go with raise of hands. Oh, nope, so I'm not there. One, do you have that, Sybil?
Friend online.
Do we have member Straight online?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, are you a
Call the
yay?
question. Yes.
Member Straight is a yay, so member Wood is here with us now. Okay, that motion carries, so we are now voting on the underlying motion, which was to approve item number 3 in the consent calendar, which is the agreement with American Institutes for Research in the Behavioral Sciences. And let's do, what would you like to do? Civil show of hands or a roll call? Let's do a roll call, whatever's easiest to track it down. So we will start with Member Wood,
Yes.
Member Straight,
Yes.
Member Reel,
Yes.
Member Norton,
Yes.
Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Carey.
Yes.
Member Hymus.
Yes.
Member Vice Chair Hart.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Vice Chair Earl.
Yes.
Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein. Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Bogus.
No.
And Member Moss is a yes. So that motion passes. And we have 2 other items on the floor that have been pulled. Item 1 and item number 2. We'll take motions on either of those motions. Member Bogus, is your light on for a motion on one of those 2?
I just have a quick question on both of these, and it might be minor, but I would still like those questions answered.
So let's take one at a time. Would you?
Can we
need a
start with mark
motion.
my words?
Sorry, first we need a motion to bring one of these 2 before the body, and then we can ask questions on it. Is there a motion on either number 1 or number 2? They've been separated. We need a motion to, I think, bring it for discussion. Right. They're both pulled, so which one are we addressing? Do we not need a motion to approve or reject? Right. Can we start with questions because it's been pulled before we have a motion on the floor? Is that what you're saying? Okay. There you go. All right. Want to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves. So which one are we going to?
Could you define number 1? I actually can't read that. I know that seems silly for some people, but which one?
Contract agreements for
Okay,
approval.
so my question was, what was last year's amount? I had asked that question and I didn't get an answer to it. I just didn't know what the percent increase was. It was just a question.
Is that a question for Cammie or Adam? You got it. Thank you.
Hi, Adam Hurd, Director of Purchasing and Contracts. I don't know that off the top of my head. I believe it stayed the same, but if I can have a minute, I'll try to find last year's agreement.
Oh, well, I don't expect you to do that. If you think it stayed the same, I'm
I
gonna
believe it
trust
did,
that. I just
yes.
didn't get an answer to that question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir. Then I would move that we approve the fiscal year 24, I can't read it. I apologize.
24.
FY '24 operating and maintenance agreement with the Department of Government Operations, Division of Facilities Construction and Management, DFCM. Is that the motion?
Yes, I would move that we
Okay,
approve
is
that.
there a
contract.
second?
Second.
Member Earl, Vice Chair Earl seconds. Any discussion of that motion? I see.
Oh, wait. Oh, I was actually asking
No,
about the
that
rent
was-
on this building and facility, unless I misspoke. Did I misspeak? No, that's correct. Okay, awesome, thank you, sir.
All right, so the motion is on item number 1, right, the DFCM. And Member Booth, is that your light on?
Oh, no.
Or is that member, okay.
Let's vote.
I see no lights. So the motion before the body is to approve consent item number 1, the FY '24 operating maintenance agreement with DFCM. Start at the top this time. Member Bogus?
Yes,
Member Booth? Member Klein? Member Davis? Member Earl? Member Green? Vice Chair Hart?
Yes.
Member Hymus? Member Carey? Member Lear? Member Norton? Member Reel? Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Wood? And Member Moss is yes. That motion passes. So we have still pulled item number 2, vendor agreement, cooperative contract for LEAs with Mark My Words LLC. Looking for a motion on that one.
I do have one short question, if possible.
Sure.
I'm wondering why there's no dollars and cents in this contract.
Adam Hurd, thank you.
Adam Hurd, Director of Purchasing and Contracts. The reason there is no dollar amount is because it's a cooperative contract that we put in place for the LEAs. So they do have statutory requirements when disposing of textbooks, whether surplus or just, reselling or disposing of them. And they asked us to do this cooperative contract on their behalf so that they have vendors in place that they can choose from when disposing of these surplus textbooks. So the dollar amounts would vary depending on the number of textbooks, the condition of the textbooks, and the pricing that the vendor has agreed with the LEA.
Okay, and follow-up, Chair?
Sure.
So as I read the contract, the LEAs pay that bill.
They may, depending on whether the vendor believes that the books have resale value and they actually purchase them. If they don't and they're just disposing of them for the LEA, then I believe there would be some cost to the LEA for that disposal.
Okay, and then my last question is pretty simple. Where's the liability? If we're taking on a contract and on behalf of our LEAs, who bears the liability when the contract goes bad?
Well, I think that would depend on the reasoning, the circumstances of, whatever a dispute may be, of whether it's a dispute between the LEA and the vendor, or if it's something more general with the contract, then, it may be between USBE and the vendor. But I think that would be very specific to the circumstances.
Answer the question?
I'm just,
Go ahead.
I would just be concerned that we bear a liability for a contract to which we kind of are not a party to. It just is a conundrum to me that I
Can we
can't.
frame that as a question? Is that,
I don't know what the question would be. Maybe I'm just not clear. I apologize.
If I can weigh in.
Please.
This is, Board's Legal Counsel, Brian Questenberry. There's an indemnity clause in all the contracts that indemnifies the board. So if someone else causes harm to the board, and say the board gets sued by another party, then this indemnity allows the board to say, we're getting sued or we're potentially damaged, to go after the offending party.
Okay, could you send that to me so I don't ever have this question again?
Yeah, you bet.
I appreciate you, Brian.
I
Thank you.
believe it's a standard term and condition it's in there. It's in every contract.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll definitely get that to you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
thank you both. Member Davis?
We worked on legislation this past session, Chair, and did it include the ways to dispose of textbooks at all in the logistics, or was it just the reporting back to USBE about how they went about doing it? Was this impacted at all?
I see Deputy Stallings raising a hand back there.
Hi,
Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. What the requirement that was repealed and will be repealed in board rule is the requirement to let other LEAs know that they are going to be disposing of
Got it.
textbooks and making them available to other LEAs. But I believe this contract is about their disposal process and not so much about notifying.
helpful, thank you.
All right, thank you. We can entertain a motion if anybody would like on item number 2. We don't have a motion for the body. Member Bogus,
I would just move that we approve item number 2.
there a second? Seconded. So the motion is to approve vendor agreement cooperative contract for LEAs with Mark My Words LLC. Any discussion on that motion? If not, board members, please vote. Member Wood? Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Reel? Yes. Member Norton? Yes. Member Lear? Yes. Member Carey? Yes. Member Hymus? Yes. Vice Chair Hart?
Yes.
Member Green? Yes. Vice Chair Earl? Yes. Member Davis?
Yes.
Member Klein? Yes. Member Booth? Member Bogus?
Yes.
And Member Moss is a yes. Thank you very much. That concludes that item on the consent calendar. We'll turn to the minutes. Am I off?
Nope, I just
All
make
right.
a motion that we accept the rest of the consent calendar, which I believe is 2 items.
So that would include, yep, go ahead. I heard a second from Member Booth. So the motion for the body is to approve the rest of the consent calendar, which is item number 2, the meeting minutes, and action item number 3, the Utah STEM school designations for 2023. Any discussion to that motion? Member Bogus, is your light on for that motion?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I would like to divide it, please.
Motion divide. Is there a second? Been seconded. So we need to vote on the motion to divide unless there's discussion of that motion.
I can
Let's
speak to the
go ahead.
motion if necessary. So the STEM contract, I did ask, but 63M-1-3204 is not a code that exists, and it's in the agenda, and so I just have some questions on that code, and to look at maybe how that all plays out so that I better understand before I vote. I want to ensure to my constituents that when I vote, I have a very clear understanding of what I'm voting on.
Okay, the motion before the body then, unless there's any further discussion to the motion to divide. Motion is to divide action item number 2 and number 3. Member Bogus.
Yes.
Member Booth. Member Klein. Member Davis. Member, Vice Chair Earl.
No.
Member Green.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hart.
No.
Member Hymus. No. Member Carey. Yes. Member Lear.
No.
Member Norton.
No.
Member Reel.
No.
Member Straight.
No.
Member Wood.
Yes.
And Chair, I am a yes. Seven yeses, so the motion to divide fails. And so the motion that was on the floor was to approve the remaining items on the consent calendar, which does include both item number 2, approval of the meeting minutes, and item number 3, stem cell designations 2023. Any discussion to that motion? Member, sorry? Well, we can come back. No, I don't think your question was presented on the code section, correct? So we now have 2 items on the floor, and Member Bogus, you have a light on.
Yeah, so I guess my question is, in our agenda memo for the STEM designation, it cites code 63M-1-3204, and that code is not actually code. And so I guess I'm wondering what we're doing here.
Let's see if anybody offers to take up the case of the errant code section.
The code
I'm not
section
sure
cited is
who's
63M,
got
which is
that. It might be,
governor's programs. It's 63M-1-3204, and it's just no longer code. It doesn't exist.
we've got a volunteer. Thank you. If you can just state your name and position on the record. we know you, but for the record.
Hi, I'm Kelly Yates. I'm from the STEM Action Center, and this is a program that I manage. Do you want to introduce yourself? Okay. So this is the line, this is the code that is referred to in the legislation that creates this program. It is the only code that Nate and I were able to find. The code has been recodified, but there isn't a new name of code that has been attached to this program. So,
was the code repealed then?
Yeah, go ahead, Member Vargas. Follow up.
help me out, Nate. You know these words better than I do.
Nathan Ox, STEM Coordinator for the Utah State Board of Education. So the references to the STEM designated program on the STEM Action Center's website are from the original bill numbers when the code was originally passed in, what year was it, Kelly?
2014.
In 2014. And so my guess is that we looked up what the original code numbers were, and there's potentially been a change since then. And the program has not been repealed. So if we have an incorrect code reference, it's my mistake. And we can refer you to the original legislation, and probably get the accurate code numbers if it would be useful.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering, and then I had a second follow-up question. Is that
Follow up,
okay?
sure, and thank you for offering
Yeah, I do
that
appreciate that.
clarification. Member Bogus,
A
follow
lot.
up?
I'm just wondering, because I did read the original code, the 2014 code, and I'm wondering, based upon what is written there, why are we voting on a governor's program? Because as I read that code, this issue is not necessarily a USBE board issue. So I'm just wondering if you could articulate that for me, please.
Yeah, when the program was designed, the way that it was created, the STEM Action Center manages the program, and the final step every year has been just for the board to approve the designations. So that is how we have shared the responsibility of this program, because it was set up to be a program shared between the two agencies. So there's one line that says that the program is shared between the agencies, and that's how we've managed the sharing of the program.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate you.
So we're not voting to approve the program, correct?
No.
That's been in effect, and each year we have presented to the board designations
Correct.
for our review and approval. Okay, thank you. And this is very educative for all of us, for you to explain that. Thank you. Any further discussion? Member Wood?
Just to clarify, in 2019, there was a bill that moved the endorsements to USBE. It was SB 172, Economic Development Amendments.
Thank you, Member Wood. Did you
And-
have further comment? Yeah.
I did want to clarify, since you mentioned endorsements, this is separate from the endorsement program. This is just the designation program.
Designation, excuse me. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, let's see. We do have a motion then on the floor for the approval of items, all remaining items in the consent calendar, which are the approval of meeting minutes, action item number 2, and action item number 3, Utah STEM school designations for 2023. Seeing no lights, Member Wood? Yes. Member Straight?
Yes.
Member Reel? Yes. Member Norton?
Yes.
Member Lear? Yes. Member Carey?
Yes.
Member Hymas? Yes. Vice Chair Hart?
Yes.
Member Green? Yes. Vice Chair Earl?
Yes.
Member Davis?
Yes.
Member Klein? Yes. Member Booth? Yes. Member Bogus? Yes. And I am Member Moss is a yes. Thank you very much. That concludes our consent calendar. And I'll just note, thank you for those who looked back at the extensive minutes from legislative session and got everything in tune for us, and for board members for weighing in on that important process as well. So monthly, yes, there is a question break. We are 5 minutes ahead, so let's take a 5-minute break, come back at 11, we'll dive into the budget.
If you want to decorate a cookie, there's more decorating and icing and cookies.